I go to Vegas. I love Vegas. I put my money on the sports in Vegas. Love everything about that. And didn't need it up the street. Like,
No, it's not up the street. It's in your pocket. Like, that's the...
You know, I leave my phone down the street.
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Doogles, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
You got yourselves the Skippy and the Doogles. We are into holiday season. Cheer is all around. Skippy has the biggest frown I've ever seen, so that just means it's even getting closer and closer to bah humbug time. SkippyDoogles@gmail.com. Send us your listener mail. We love that. And we got the promotion going on at skippydoogles.supercast.com for our premium subscriptions. Check those out. They are limited time, highly discounted. Go check that out. 4 items for y'all today. We're going to first talk about how Mitt Romney wants less money. You don't get that very often from billionaires, but he wants less money. The second thing we're going to talk about, sports gambling, the reality of it that people voted in. Financial nihilism is the third, and the parallels between the AI mania and .com. Y'all hear about that a lot, but our boy, James McIntosh, put out a piece on this, and whenever he writes, we listen.
We read, actually, but you know.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. When he writes, we read.
How old do you think you need to be to even know who Mitt Romney is?
98.
Born in 98 or 98
No.
years old?
It's a good question. I would say this is an odd answer. Up until January 6, 2021, I think that you had to be probably somewhere around in your 40s at this point in time. But because on January 6th, that's when the Capitol was stormed, he scampered away. Remember, there was a lot of footage where on a daily basis where you saw him scampering away in the Capitol building. And so I think more people probably know him now. But to really know about his career, I think you probably have to be in your 40s, at least.
Mitt Romney, former consultant, former head of the Salt Lake City Olympics, if I remember correctly, and former presidential candidate for Obama's second term. Okay? If you don't know.
Yep.
If you're 28.
And a little book plug here. There's a book called Romney, The Reckoning, which I'm going to put in the camp of if you enjoy anything about political figures, I think it's worth a read. The reason I state that is because this book, so it's a biography. However, what Romney said when he wrote this, when he thought about writing it, was he goes, I was going to put an autobiography out there, but I realized someone can't objectively write about themselves. So instead what he did was he found a journalist who was not necessarily aligned with him and handed over all his emails, all his texts, and said, you can now see my life. Go write my story. And it's a really interesting path to take for something like this. I think it's a worthwhile read for people, again, if you're into the political biosphere. All right, continue.
Which is no one, Doogles. No one.
I know.
Mitt Romney writes a opinion piece in the New York Times that says, and I quote, tax the rich like me. I'm going to do a high level of the specifics because they're not that interesting. But he takes 2 general approaches and says, typically, Democrats have wanted to raise taxes, and typically, Republicans have wanted to cut spending, and it's time to do both. And I think once you're of a certain age, you look back at prominent figures of old as not the good old days, but this is a person that I can respect because we've grown up together or whatever. I don't know what I'm trying to say exactly here, but you look to someone who was a former presidential candidate who was highly respected, who still is highly respected in most circles. And it's interesting to read something when they seem to contradict something they would have said 12 years ago or more. Because when he was running for president, this would not have been his platform, right? What I find interesting is then he gives some ideas for how you might raise taxes and how you might cut spending. The reason for this is the Social Security fund is projected to run out by 2034. Gosh, that's not far from now, Doogles.
No, it's less than a decade away. Less than a decade.
It's really not far from now. And he talks about closing loopholes and capital gains taxes at death and 1031 exchanges. Like, it's so interesting. These are things that were untouchable to especially the wealthiest of the wealthy, right? These
That's right.
loopholes in terms of how you keep wealth going from one generation to the next, how you exchange property without paying taxes. Like, I just thought it was it kind of floored me.
It's a fresh take from this type of
sensible.
person. Fresh take from this type of person. This is a fresh take. And the part that feels to me most sensible in what he writes out is he does point out these, as he states, not even just loopholes, but caverns is how he describes them that are sitting there. But the part that feels most sensible is where he draws the line. At least there was, I can't remember if it was for all of them, but it was at least on the capital gains treatment. He said, if your estate's over $100 million, and to me, the reason I state that that's sensible is because his point that he also names is that when some of these elements were created in the tax code, it was in order to protect folks that had much, much smaller estates, like farmers. Like, your farm could be ruined if you now have to hand your farm down to your kids and the farm has to continue. But he goes, it wasn't written for the person that has $100 billion. And so you can have still a pretty fine estate at $100 million in this, and what he's proposing not hit you. But above that is like not what the tax code was meant to do. So let's. And I'd argue
you index that to inflation, and that number can grow. Like, he gives an example here specifically of Musk. If he originally purchased Tesla stock for $1 billion, it's currently worth $500 billion. These are made up numbers, but if he never sells it, then his heirs inherit that $500 billion, and no one ever pays taxes on it, and
becomes their new cost basis.
Exactly. And he has no incentive to sell it because he can go to any bank on earth and say, give me $5 billion to borrow against my Tesla stock. And they'll say, that's great. He also gets a tax benefit on the interest for that debt that he takes out against the stock. So you can play games with this, and people have, because people are smart.
Yep.
There's just some really sensible. He talks about limiting the employment, or removing the employment taxes cap, which is currently like $167K. Why is there a cap? Simple stuff. I don't know. I like when there's a more middle of the road take. And I thought when I saw the headline, I was like, wait, Mitt Romney's saying raise taxes? And he's not really saying that. He's saying, let's find some common ground. I guess he said that, but he said, let's find some common ground and resolve these issues that we have.
Yeah. And similar to what Warren Buffett has said before, when he's like, but so long as that's the law, I'm still going to take the tax breaks. Like, but change the law. Change the law, but as long as it's the law, I'm still going to take the tax breaks. I bring that up for Mitt Romney because of his Roth IRA. The famous Mitt Romney Roth IRA where
I have forgotten this story.
I'm going to get some of the detail wrong, but directionally it's fine for the folks listening to the pod. That I think it may have been the money that he had in Bain Capital, like his investment in Bain Capital, something like that was put in through a self-directed IRA. And so on the other side, when he takes all of the money out of it, he gets taxed on the front, not on the back end, Roth IRA. He just takes that out tax-free. That's why I bring up the Buffett thing. It's like, look, change the law. But if this is the law, then I'm going to go ahead and
completely. I don't begrudge anyone for following the law.
Well, sensible. I think these are sensible things, make a lot of sense. If we look at what the spirit of the law is, it's not obviously historically not there to protect people that have $1 billion, $500 million. Like, that's just not the purpose of it. So we should relook at these things. Okay, fishbowl reach. Should we go to the reality versus the belief of sports gambling?
Deep breath.
Okay, do it. Woosah.
Back in 2022, when sports gambling was not really legal. Outside of maybe Jersey and Vegas.
Yeah, just the what we hold as the pinnacle of Americana, these two places.
23% of Americans thought that sports gambling was a bad thing, and 23% thought sports gambling was a good thing, but people's exposure was limited. 36% feel like sports gambling is a bad thing, and only 14% feel like it's a good thing. The difference there is just people that don't have a strong opinion either way.
Yep.
I expect this trend to continue. I am exhausted with just the ads on sporting events and the whole apparatus. In Colorado this passed, remember Doogles, it passed with this weird add-on where they're going to take the proceeds and build like more reservoirs, so we insured our water future through 2050 or who knows what.
Yep.
And I was kind of like, water would be nice to have in the mountains. I mean, but it's just, I don't enjoy this. I don't feel like the world has gone better. I don't know that I would have been in a bad thing camp in 2022. I'm probably in a bad thing camp in 2025. But more just like a fourth category of exhausted. Like, I'm just sick of hearing about it.
I'm too tired to respond to this survey.
Back
in 2022, I've told you this before. In 2022, in Colorado, I voted against it. And
so
it's
you
not,
thought it was a bad thing at that time.
It was. I don't know if I would put it in those words exactly, but maybe that's what it ends up equating to. But as people know who listen to this pod, I go to Vegas. I love Vegas. I put my money on the sports in Vegas. Love everything about that, and didn't need it up the street. Like
no, it's not up the street. It's in your pocket. Like that's
I leave my phone down the street. Got to protect yourself. Yeah, that's kind of what it was. And now even this is, I can't even flag this as like complaint necessarily. It's just one of those things where maybe I'm old humbug, bah humbug, curmudgeon. But I enjoyed the process. I'd go to Vegas during March Madness to vote on my sports teams. These 18-year-olds playing basketball. And I would stand in the line. It was annoying to stand in the line, but it was a ritual. Stand in the line. I get up to the front of the line, give the person behind there all my picks. They hand me the ticket. Mm-hmm. Last time, I stand in the line. I get up there. Once I got past my third pick, because I'm trying to bet on more games, they were like, oh, you got to use the machine if you're going past 3. I was like, I can't, like, analog isn't an option anymore?
No. They want it to be socially isolating and depressing, don't you know? Like, you're not allowed to talk to someone. You can't actually, there's no rituals allowed. Like, this can't be a human bonding experience. It just has to be look at your phone and lose money.
I don't know that it's bad, but what I'd say is probably that I also don't believe that it's good. Like, I don't see the huge benefit of it, and I see potential downsides, as we've discussed when we've looked at like reports and whatnot, of people that are generally losing meaningful money to themselves are in middle to lower incomes. Like, it probably isn't good and unnecessary unless we get that water reservoir.
I tried one thing. There was a ruling this week against, I believe, DraftKings for almost $1 million, where some guy, I think in Delaware or New Jersey, found a glitch in their system where if you bet someone would have, like, a team would have more than 8 hits, or an individual would have more than 8 hits, then he parlayed it with that individual having more than 7 hits and that individual having more than 6 hits. And the computer put that all together, and so his odds got insane, and eventually he had someone hit and then completely robbed them. I think that's hilarious. At one point, I tried to build similar parlays to see if there was a loophole in the system. There wasn't, which made me incredibly frustrated. But good. That's good. I like that sort of stuff.
When you say Delaware or New Jersey, I think it was probably both. It was probably a person in Delaware that thought about it, and they executed it through somebody in New Jersey. That's just that's my take.
Okay, and then I wasn't going to do this, but there's also, if you're now in my camp where you think this is a bad thing and you have great self-discipline, there is a way to use the $1,000 bonus that costs 2 different apps to find yourself $1,000 worth of free money. You guys can Google that if you need to. Bet on the same game, same outcome on 2 different apps. You'll win one, you'll lose one. Then you get your free $1,000 from the one that you didn't lose. Then do the same thing again. It's a lot of work, but it is a
only you
$1,000.
Only you would.
I mean,
take something you hate and still find a way to skipify it.
This is like, if you really don't like a company, you can Google for them and click on their links. This works great with HVAC companies, because HVAC companies pay like $10 per link click. So if you really have a bad experience with one, leave the bad review by all means, but also Google it and click on their paid link like over and over and over. That's the way to go. That took a turn I was not expecting.
I'm going to make this visit fully unprofitable for you. Okay. All right. So related to gambling, reach into the fishbowl, related to gambling, there's a piece from Kyla Scanlon about financial nihilism. Gen Z financial nihilism. The title of this is in the Wall Street Journal, Why My Generation is Turning to Financial Nihilism by Kyla Scanlon. First, what is that? What she says is it's a term that was coined by some podcaster a few years ago. It describes the sense that the economic system no longer rewards prudence or long-term planning. That is what she says financial nihilism is. So people don't care. How is this related to gambling? When she looks at Gen Z and she says, everybody's saying Gen Z got their meme coins and their meme stocks, all the memes are looking for that quick hit. They love the chaos of the system. She goes, it's not exactly that simple. What used to be the case, the prior belief in upward mobility after the war, big war, was it's contingent on certain fundamentals, strong institutions, affordable education, accessible homeownership, and stable work. And she says those things are all failing and gives the examples that we've talked about enough on this pod that we don't have to go through them. But she gives the examples of how homeownership is now so hard. AI is taking all the jobs that are for entry-level folks. Education is not affordable. The price is increasing too much. People are in debt. Institutions aren't trusted. So all those things that were the fundamentals that future success was contingent on don't exist. So what else is someone to do? I'm going to read this full paragraph. Faced with that reality, taking a gamble on Fartcoin or betting how many times Elon Musk tweets in a week can feel strangely rational. A small chance at a large return beats a near certainty of a slow decline. Even a stock market with an almost 20% gain over the course of 2025 can't compete psychologically with the promise of 1,000% gain in one day. The logic is closer to game theory than pure irrationality.
People act rationally. I'm not going to argue that point. This is a poor choice. There's one thing that's really important when it comes to finance and investing. It's a relative game, right? If you get a 10% pay raise and your neighbor gets an 11% pay raise, you're jealous of that person. If you get a 50% pay raise and your neighbor gets a 60% pay raise, you're jealous of that person. It doesn't matter if your needs are completely covered, right? This is why the super rich people all do incredibly stupid stuff, because it's not about the actual dollars and cents. It's about comparing themselves to someone else, right?
Yep.
And this is where if you get caught in that game, and that's where you think happiness comes from, you will never be happy because there's always someone with more money than you. But the advantage to this, if you're in this cohort, if you're in Gen Z and you feel like there's no hope, you feel like you can't afford a house and you feel like the system is rigged against you, your peer group might be gambling on Fartcoin. It's a lot easier for you to succeed over the long term, not necessarily by Thursday. It's a lot. If you save money for retirement when everyone else retires with $0 and you have less than you feel like you should, you'll still feel rich compared to those people. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier to save for your kids' college, because if no one else saves for their kids' college and you put 5% of your salary away, you're going to have a huge college fund compared to your kids' peers. I think this is a huge advantage for the people that can actually think long-term and want to be prudent. Yep. You can crush your competition. And unfortunately, that's how it works. They are your competition. You're going to be competing to buy a house against these people. You're going to be competing to send your kids to college against these people. You're going to be competing for your retirement community with these people. So take advantage of that.
I love that. I love it. I'm going to give a more skeptical and curmudgeon-y take on it too. But this is, but I do love that. The thing that hits me is when she talks about how upward mobility was always contingent on certain fundamentals. And I look at that list. Those were never beliefs for me. That's the biggest thing that hits me. There was at no point where in my family or my life where I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to succeed because there are strong institutions and education's affordable and homeownership is so accessible and work is a stable place. Like that was never none of those were ever things that I saw as a part of the ladder. And the reason I think this kind of might overlap with what you were saying was I have more probably grown up with the belief that chaos is opportunity. Like, and that's where I think it overlaps with what you were talking about a bit. You didn't say that exactly, but it was more like when things are a bit in flux, when checklists start to become fuzzier, that's when you can take your agency and do a thing. Like, and that's where inflection points happen, I think, for people and for economies. And so for me, that's why I love what you were saying before. It's a different bend on what I think is kind of that same take. But I never saw that list as like what it was. And so that's just I don't know if that's a majority view or anything, but that's where my take is. And then, sorry, last thing before I turn it over to you. When I go back to the definition of financial nihilism that she gave, and she said it's the sense that the economic system no longer rewards prudence or long-term planning. Give it a shot. Give some prudence. Give it a shot. I don't know. You're like 24. You haven't had a long-term and you're not doing prudence. Like, give it a chance.
I've talked about this before, but when I get a dividend payment today that's bigger than my entire first sum of money that I started investing with, I go, oh, maybe I'm glad I gave it a shot. Like, you're exactly right. This is not a doom and gloom. I don't know. It seems too easy to come to this conclusion that nothing's going to work for me, so I'm not going to try. If that is, if we take this out of the investing world or the upward mobility beliefs world or whatever world we're in here, and put it in sports or anything hard, this is not true, but an extreme example, like my family has a history of cancer, so I'm going to get cancer and die. I might as well, I shouldn't go get a job. Why would I do that? Why would I make any friends? That seems risky. I'll just lose those friends when I die. I mean, I hope you understand how hyperbolic I'm being, but at some point, what are you going to do?
I think there are people that will listen to that and say, okay, that is hyperbolic and ridiculous. And the number of people that I have come across that are closer to that than not is too high for my own personal comfort, I think. Because I do think that people, it might not be exactly cancer, but I think there are versions of that sound similar when I come to my ears. And I do think there are too many people that are like, yeah, this is inevitable, so who cares? Like, what is it, right? There was a woman I was talking to, it was probably 2 or 3 months ago. And during that conversation, she was talking about a difference between her and her siblings and her and some other people that she grew up with. And she grew up in a rural town. And it's all the things that you might read about when it's middle Americana type, drugs would take over the town, right? Like those kinds of things, right? And she was saying, I think a lot of people in the town were just screw it. It's not going to work anyway. And so they're I'm just going to, if people get pregnant when they're 15, okay, that's just my future, right? And so I don't think what you said is actually that different than, sadly, what kind of hits. And I think it sucks that people don't have that belief anymore. That really sucks. We have done people a disservice through the system, and grab onto your agency.
Yeah, and we've talked about this a fair amount. I mean, to me, she doesn't say the American dream here, but when she talks about upward mobility, there's some shades of truth there. And the American dream is not one thing in particular as much as it is the belief that you can go where you want to go with hard work, right? Yep. That's what always gets concerning to me. But honestly, if you flip this idea on its head and say, well, the rest of my peer group wants to go gamble, I'm just going to crush them.
Yeah.
That could be awesome.
Yeah.
It could be really, really good for you.
Think about, for the folks out there, think about this in a more tangible light at work. If you show up, you are 24 years old, still trying to figure things out in your workplace. You've been at this company for 18 months. What does it look like to move up? And every day, people come into the office. I'm imagining that you're coming to the office. Every day, people come into the office, and they are still drunk from the night before. Mm-hmm. And then they go about their day. You could either be like, well, I guess that's what we do now, is we come in drunk the night before. Or you go this is my chance to look a lot better than... And to do things that are more consistent. I can show up in the meeting with focus, and that's the option.
Go do it. I didn't think this would turn into a pep talk, but by all means.
Oh, you didn't realize I showed up to the podcast?
I'm reaching into the fishbowl. So our boy James McIntosh has been on the show. We love him. He is, of all the authors, financial journalisms we've talked to, he is the most analytical, I'd say. Yeah. Really in his head with the facts, and his pieces, I think he writes weekly, are always like so well researched and well thought out. And just so when James writes an article titled "The Eerie Parallels Between the AI Mania and the Dot-Com Bubble," I go, I want to see this. You should read it because it's just like incredibly well reasoned and it's just facts. There's no opinion here, right? So he goes through. Here's the key points, right? Stock valuations are the most expensive since the dot-com bubble. It's indisputable. He uses forward PE here, but he has a graph. It basically shows they're almost at the exact same level. Facts. He talks about the parallels between AI data center investment, largely driven by debt, and the dot-com bubble on telecom network spending, largely financed by debt. Like, again, just a fact. It's a good piece. It's really hard to be like, and on Thursday, the stock market's going to crash. And we're not doing that. But this debate has been happening for 24, 36 months. And it seems like every week someone says, oh, it's not even comparable, or we're in 1996, not 1999, or whatever. And that's where James, for me, is a great voice of reason here to say, here's some facts. And it looks pretty compelling.
I agree with that. And I think if someone says, yes, here are all the facts, it is comparable, and you can then put a "this time is different" on the other side, then okay, great. But at least let's agree on the first part of that. And to your point, the people that say something more like, no, this just is, like, the facts are different. Like, that's where some people seem to start with, like, the facts are different. You go, no, it's pretty comparable. And with other bubbles. Like, there's no doubt in my mind right now that we are in a bubble. Zero doubt that we are in a bubble. That does not mean that it's popping tomorrow or next week or next year or 2 years. Like, but the bubble can keep getting bigger. But we're in a bubble for certain.
So I loved what Bill Gurley said on this week. He said people try and put you into one of two corners. They try and say, do you believe in AI? Like, isn't AI amazing? Or are we in an AI bubble? And he's like, it's both, you idiots. So AI is great. It's game-changing. It's transformative. Anything that's game-changing and transformative will have money flow to it because people want to get rich. Money will flow to it. More money will flow to it than is needed to flow to it, which means you create a bubble, which means it's pops. Like, those two things are the same argument. And people are always trying to be like, are you a believer in AI, or is it, is the financial world ending?
No, exactly.
No.
We had an analogy about this with your talents and getting a job. I'll now have a different analogy with a house. You can come to a house and say, this house is amazing. It fits my family perfectly. It's wonderful. We could build a great life here. And I go, oh, I love all that. It's $1 billion. And you're like, oh, well, then I'm not going to buy it. That doesn't mean you don't think the house is great. It just means that $1 billion is not the price that will make sense for you to pay for that house. And those two things can be separate.
I don't know. I discovered this one this week a few blocks away that has a big hill in the backyard with a slide and a pool. I was pretty into it. Yeah. It was closer to that $1 billion price tag than I wanted, though.
If those interest rates drop. True. I mean, $1 billion at 0%. That's great.
That's right.
Hand that down. Hand that down.
1,000-year loan. I mean, come on. Trump's going to make 1,000-year home loans, right?
Yes. All of your future generations will have to pay this loan off. But it will be $25 a month.
Goodness. I think that's it.
Yeah,
got any other hot takes for me?
Oh, I mean, I got plenty of hot takes, but we can save those for the future.
Okay. Let's see. We are less than 2 weeks away from year end.
Ooh.
Which means end of year portfolio review. Again, that's just for our most premium subscribers. SkippyDoogles.supercast.com. We will do that in early January. And Doogles, I told you this over text, but there's like no names that are cheap enough to meet my there's one or two maybe. So that's going to turn into a really fun episode because I have to decide what to do when we're in, I'm going to say it, when we're in bubble land.
Oh, you said it.
For my investing strategy that buys dirt cheap value stocks. This is uncharted territory almost for me.
Dirt cheap right now is just a funny phrase to have it in this market.
Does
Things
not
not
exist.
anything. Many things are quite expensive. I think for both of our portfolios, next year will be quite fascinating for different but overlapping reasons. I cannot wait for this year to be over. Like, I cannot wait. I've been waiting for this year to be over for 3 months. So it just needs to end, people. Like, it just needs to end. It needs to end right now.
It's like, yeah, you're running the 5K or whatever, and you want to stamp the time and actually get to rest,
Yes.
Just exhausted. You can't feel your legs, but you're trying to get to the finish line. All right, we will see y'all next week. Listen, I would request listener mail for some feedback. We have historically done shows over holiday periods because we think it's a nice break, right? When everyone else takes time off, we keep grinding for you.
Oh, yeah.
If that's actually true, please let us know, because otherwise we might not record on the week of Christmas and New Year's if no one actually loves it. But we think you do, and so give us that feedback. We'd appreciate it. SkippyDoogles@gmail.com.
Thank
Peace.
you, everybody.